Well, first, the name family planning is not so good, because how we can plan a person which is immortal, which is unique, whom God creates, a person for all eternity, to plan it, it is not fitting and not appropriate to use such a term. Like we plan, how do you say, to some plans, some programs in the agriculture or in the cattle and so on. It is not appropriate for human person, out of dignity. Therefore, we have to avoid this family planning term. And well, until the 20th century, there was no such an issue as so-called natural family planning, or as they say, to use these periods of where a child cannot be conceived. It was only known by late in the 20th century through the science, and then the church had to answer to this issue. So let us say all the generations of Catholics and even humanity, the couples, they lived probably almost 2000 years without knowing that there is these periods, or not using this, or not being conscious of these unfertile periods of the women in. And so this is simply to state this. And so they, all the generations of Catholics until the 20th century, they simply accepted the children as they came, as from the hands of God. And in this case, it was God who was planning, in this case, more than human beings. And they lived their conjugal life normal. And also, of course, this so-called natural family planning requires then an abstinence from the relationships for a certain time, as an abstinence. But this also the church, since the first centuries, recommended. St. Paul, to couples when they go in a period of more serious prayer, St. Paul recommended to abstain from the relationships. And then later, the church in the West and East recommended, it was not a command, a recommendation for Catholic couples to abstain in the entire Lent time, for example. Or because since people until the 20th century did not so often receive Holy Communion, maybe several times during the year, or more rarely, they were recommended also the night before the reception of Holy Communion to abstain, to make this abstinence. Like we take also abstinence from food. So it was a kind of discipline which the church had known, but not this technical and scientific method of natural planning. So this is simply to know the facts. Of course, to use this time of unfertile period, it is allowed by the church. It is not a sin. But John Paul II stated that even couples can commit a mortal sin when they abuse the so-called natural family planning for egoistic purposes or for similar anti-conceptional mentality. It's also possible. And there are people, even not believing, not Catholics, who use the so-called natural family planning as a means of contraception. There is also cases. So we have to distinguish these and to be careful with this method, and to pray to God that couples it would be more perfect to leave the decision to God and to trust in the Lord. Of course, there could be extreme situations of sickness and so where probably it is possible, and the church allows to use this time of infertility of the women.